Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Ted Dabrowski, Vice President of Policy at the Illinois Policy Institute. And Ted, we have the Chicago Teachers Union vote total and in some of the most unsurprising news of the past year, after a 97% vote in the mock vote to authorize a strike, the teachers union had a formal vote and basically achieved about the same percentage. So the strike has been authorized. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, and it won't happen before February at the earliest. But teachers union is willing to strike, and it seems to me, you correct me if I'm wrong, that they're striking singularly over the issue of their pension contributions. They pay 2% of their 2% into their pensions right now. They're guaranteed seven-figure pensions right now. CPS wants to increase that pension contribution by teachers. Teachers don't want to, and they're willing to strike over it.
Well, let's be clear about that. You're right. The teachers are supposed to pay 9% of their salaries towards their pensions, and today they only pay 2% of their salaries. Taxpayers, basically, the school district is picking up the rest, and so the teachers don't want to see that cut. The unions don't want to see that cut. But I think so definitely they'll always be protecting the money they earn, and they want more. But I think the big issue is that CTU just had a strike in 2012, and here they are coming back again. They got big concessions from Rahm Emanuel last time. They rolled Rahm Emanuel, and their moves last time have pushed CPS into bankruptcy. The district is now junk rated. And we had layoffs, school closings. Do they really want more of that? And that's the question. What is it? Who are they protecting? And is it just a smaller and smaller club of teachers who are protected, and a whole bunch of others will be laid off, and the kids will be last? And
let's be clear too: the Chicago Public School System on the management side, which is the city, and the Rahm toadies like Forrest Claypool, the toady du jour, who's the head of CPS at present. I mean, they're not wearing the white hats. They're going to the state for a $500 million bailout because they haven't been willing to make the tough financial decisions either.
Well, this is like Puerto Rico asking Greece for a bailout, right? So
right,
Chicago going to Illinois for a bailout, it doesn't make sense. And what it is that nobody wants to take on the reforms. They just want to keep the unions happy, to keep all the funding going, and they'll do whatever they can to do it. In the end, what they're going to do, though, is put the kids back out on the street.
Let's get our friend Mike Flannery. Mike Flannery, of course, Fox Chicago political editor, longtime political journalist, keen political eye in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois. Mike Flannery joins us now. Mike, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Dan. How are you doing?
Good. So does this seem to you like Groundhog Day with respect to the Chicago Teachers Union, the possibility of a strike? What has happened between the strike that occurred in 2012 and the strike that we're on the precipice of in 2016? What's changed?
Well, the financial condition at the Chicago public schools, the Board of Education has continued to deteriorate, and there's talk they're actually going to run out of cash. I mean, simply cash in the kitty to pay daily expenses. Sometime in the next few months, the gears may seize up, and So from that perspective, things have gotten worse. And the relationship between the Board of Ed, among the Board of Ed, the mayor, and the teachers union has grown ever more toxic.
And in addition to that, you have no real perceived interest in the governor, for example, agreeing to a $500 million bailout of CPS that Forrest Claypool wants. He had suggested earlier in the year that maybe CPS has to go bankrupt and reorganize.
Well, yeah, I mean, just the opposite. I mean, the governor sees, the problems at the Board of Ed and the schools, and the fact that the gears may seize up and things just come to a halt as the last remaining major piece of leverage that he has. It looks increasingly like Mike Madigan is completely uninterested in doing a deal with the governor. And that's been the heart of the governor's strategy, sort of a version of, well, I'm just going to hold my breath until I turn blue, or you guys give me a deal. The Democrats have called him and raised him on that strategy. But when the school system shuts down and 395,000 kids are out on the street, that's going to be a little tougher for them to take.
Well, hey, Mike, Ted here. What's amazing about this, you've talked about that dynamic, the Madigan-Rauner dynamic, but there's the other dynamic that's going to really, I'm curious to know how it's going to end up, but we've talked about Rahm and his weakened position given everything that's going on with the McDonald case. How the heck is he going to have the power to take on the unions? Are they going to think that they can now run over him again? Will he have any backing from anybody to stand up?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's he's weaker than ever, and I'd submit that's bad news for the governor because he and Rahm talk all the time. They've socialized. I wouldn't go so far as to say they're friends, but they've socialized, and they have that kind of professional relationship, or that combination of personal political thing that goes on, I guess, at the top of the corporate world and the political world. And the governor has counted on the mayor to pressure John Cullerton, the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, and the Rahm's in a much weaker position to do that. But I think that as long as here's the other piece of this. Uniquely among unionized workforces in America, teachers' unions get to strike without risking the loss of a single day of pay in places like Illinois, because there's for all the many strikes that the Chicago Teachers Union has held, they've never lost a work day. So every strike day gets made up in June or sometimes into July, if that's what it takes. And so the teachers they miss a payday while they're striking, perhaps, but then it's made up at the end. So they get to run a no risk strike, and in that the power balance is way out of balance.
Well, that's right. And as Ted referred to at the outset, what happened back in 2012? They pantsed Rahm. So what happens is teachers go out, they rally the parents, and ultimately the political pressure builds such that politicians like Tiny Dancer wilt, and he signs a $300 million contract that he has no idea how to finance. And 4 years later, we're in the same position. So why shouldn't the teachers go out and strike again?
Absolutely.
All it results in their is wages increasing and benefits staying the same, if not improving.
All right. So let's imagine it's Mayor Proft or Mayor Dabrowski. Tell me what you guys do.
I'll tell you what I'll do. And I wrote about it in the Chicago Tribune. We had a little Twitter exchange about it.
We did.
I'll tell you what I do. I
think that's why I'm here.
I would put the teachers and the system to a market test like has never occurred. And the idea that the jobs of being a Chicago public school teacher is birthright needs to be put to a test.
All right, so 20,000 plus teachers hit the street in April or May, and what do?
Start replacing them.
And how do you do that? How do you replace tens of thousands of teachers, Dan?
You take applications and then you start hiring qualified teachers to replace them. And if that needs...
This will take years.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, the Prospect Heights strike, this little grade school in Prospect Heights, which is not too far from the city of Chicago, when they had their strike earlier this fall, we talked to the school board member there. Every time they have an opening, they have 200 to 300 applications. Now, that doesn't mean that every person who applies to teach in Prospect Heights wants to teach in the city of Chicago, but I would guess that even at a reduced level, the compensation package pretty attractive in the city of Chicago, and there are a lot of decent schools, decent neighborhoods in which to teach, and there's a lot of people that want an opportunity to teach. And if we have to relax the requirements, the hurdles to be a teacher, so for example, the idea of Nobel Prize winners at the University of Chicago not being able to teach economics at the high school level, silliness. So if we have to do other things to radically restructure a system that doesn't educate children and doesn't do so at exorbitant prices, then that's the path we should go on. And we should do what Reagan did with the air traffic controllers in 81 and say, hey, you have a window. You want to cross the picket line and protect your jobs. You have this window. And when that window closes, then you're out. You have to do something to bring this to a boil, Mike, in my opinion, and this kind of tinkering on the edges, as we've been doing for generations, results in generations of kids being lost, never even having the opportunity to earn a quality education, and the system, as we are all describing, junk-rated and bankrupt.
Okay, you'll have plenty of applicants to teach at Walter Payton. Dan, I submit that you're going to have far fewer applicants to teach at Harper in Englewood or Revs and Orr on the west side.
Nobody knows. You don't know. Nobody knows. It's never been put to a market test.
I don't think the Board of Ed is even set up to conduct 20,000 interviews. How do you screen? So you'd have to screen for felony convictions. You'd have to, it's complicated hiring a teacher.
I understand.
It's complicated.
Mike, I think the big question is, how long will we allow? And maybe this is another discussion of other.
Hold on for a second, Ted. So I just want to clarify with Dan. So until we've hired these teachers, so we'd reopen some schools. I guess because we conduct these interviews on a rolling basis.
Correct.
We could reopen Walter Payton and Northside College Prep and Whitney Young. We could staff them pretty quickly. But these other schools where it might be more difficult to hire qualified teachers, and there are specific rules too about being qualified. So we just throw them into total chaos?
Oh, what are they in now? I mean, you can't make the argument, what do we have now versus utopia? You have to make the argument, what am I proposing versus what we have now? So here's the point. We have charter operators in here. Bring in Noble. Bring in Tim King, who runs Urban Prep, these other successful models that we should be scaling rather than limiting. This is an all-hands-on-deck opportunity. It's not just, one mayor making a decision and then say, well, let's just see how it works out in market forces.
Tim King. I conducted the interview with Tim King when he was a high school senior, and he went to the university I went to. I gave him a very good recommendation to scale up Urban Prep, Dan, from one campus to 2 and then 3 campuses. Took years.
Yeah.
It took years. So you're suggesting that tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of Chicago school kids are going to be just out on the street?
No, that's silly. That is not the case. That is not the case.
So
this is 1,000 flowers bloom. I'll tell you what else we can do. We can redirect the money so that people have the opportunity to take those dollars and go to any school they want. You have 650 schools in the city of Chicago. You have charter school operators. You have other people who would love to come in and run schools. You have principals in local neighborhood schools that could be ready to go as well. And once they got new staff on a rolling basis, the idea, is this going to be easy? No, it's not going to be easy. Is it going to be linear? No, it's not going to be linear. But the idea that we just continue to fund this central plan, Politburo style catastrophe because we're unwilling to take a 1,000 flowers bloom approach is silliness to me. It's insanity.
And I think, Mike, the big point is that if we keep with the same system, you've got 2 monopolies, and these are 2 monopolies that we need to break. Nobody likes being taken advantage of a monopoly, but that's what's happening today. You've got a monopoly administration of schools and a monopoly provider of teachers. And those 2 groups, when they want to work together, they're hand in hand. When they want to oppose each other, they dump the kids and they dump the families. And so we already have a failed system. It's failing in every respect, and we can talk about that forever. But until we do something drastic, we can't get there.
Let's talk about that. You know that the high school graduation rate is now approaching the national average.
Oh, come on.
And
these kids are not ready to...
It's much better than the peer cities of Houston.
Come on.
Baltimore, Washington, the Chicago's top 10, the big peer cities. The college attendance rate has been going up dramatically.
Mike, 1 in 10 kids out of CPS that are freshmen today are going to get a BA by the time they're 25.
Well, Dan,
come on.
I believe that the Urban Education Institute at the University of Chicago has some new numbers. I remember when it was like 4%. I think now it's in the mid-teens.
But if you strip the selective enrollment schools, Mike, I think you're going to get very different numbers.
Yeah, and also, Mike, what are you arguing? You're making the argument to defend the system that you were making against my proposal, leaving kids in chaos for generation. We're supposed to celebrate that 13 or 15 or 10% of kids are getting a BA by the time 25. Meanwhile, 80% are left in second-class citizen status for life, and that's okay because we're making incremental progress. But me saying system change.
No, that's a problem. I think you've just Okay, let me challenge the straw man that you've just constructed.
Please.
None of that, what you just outlined, is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that your PATCO, your Ronald Reagan PATCO solution to a teacher strike is wildly and ridiculously impossible.
Nothing's impossible.
It's an invitation. It's an invitation to extended. It's going to make a bad situation worse. That's not the solution. Now, some of the expansion of schools like Tim King's urban prep, I'm enormously supportive of that. I'd love to see, instead of 3 urban preps, I'd love to see 30, 90. I'm all on board that. I do know there are. I've been in some charter schools that are very problematic. Charter schools where the numbers are. I've been in charter schools that underperform the system-wide averages. So charters are not a cure-all. You need good personnel.
So Mike,
you need good.
How about enlist the archdiocese?
Yeah, Mike, are you in favor of taking the power out of the teachers, the unions, and the administration and giving it to the parents? Let them have vouchers to go to another school if they're not happy with the current system.
We're already transitioning, as you know, Ted. Rahm Emanuel's actually, for the first time now, since in the last couple of years, the money does follow the kid.
No, but I'm talking about really following the kids so that they can leave the public school system.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea.
And the archdiocese is a big operator of schools, and they're closing schools right now. So how about that? There's more infrastructure, more capacity.
So so you're saying that the money could go into a religious school?
Yeah.
We're not saying that it goes to the religious school. We say it goes to the parents, and they can use it at whatever school they want.
Like Milwaukee for the past 20 years, and Cleveland, and Florida, and on and on and on.
Well, that's worth talking about. I think again the devil's in the details here. That's a. I don't think the time to do those kinds of things, though, Dan and Ted, is in the middle of a strike. I don't think
there'll never be a time. If we don't do it now, there'll never be a time.
You do it when there's an inflection point, Mike. We're going to have to continue this discussion another time, but I appreciate you coming on. It's always fun, always insightful. Mike Flannery,
Thanks,
he's
Mike.
Political editor of Fox Chicago. Thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.